2024 has been a great year for gaming laptops so far, especially in the 14-inch space. We've seen a ton of new thin and light gaming machines packed with a ton of power, and the HP Omen Transcend 14 is one of the better made laptops you'll come across this year. My name is Yadullah, you're watching Candid.Technology, and today we're talking about the HP Omen Transcend 14, HP's first attempt at a 14-inch gaming laptop, and a pretty good at that one except for one catch. The model that we have here comes equipped with an Intel Ultra 7 155H, 16GB of LPDDR5X RAM running at 7400 megatransfers per second, which is blazing fast and hence soldered onto the motherboard, so no RAM upgrades this year. There is an RTX 4060 GPU with a beautiful 2.8K 16:10 OLED display with HDR support. Now, since this is a Core Ultra laptop, there is also an onboard NPU, but other than a few camera features, it's basically useless. The laptop weighs in around 1.6 kgs and around 2 kgs with the included power brick. So you can spec this thing with up to a Core Ultra 9, 32GB of RAM and an RTX 4070, but at that configuration, you aren't really necessarily getting the most for your money. You'll understand why when we reach the performance section of this review. It's also a USB-C charging only laptop with a 140-watt charger included in the box. This is both a good and a bad thing because it makes charging the laptop really versatile but also limits how much power it can use, and that is this laptop's biggest weakness. The laptop's made out of metal and has a rather sturdy build quality. The hinge also feels great, and this is a one-hand open machine if you can somehow manage to wedge your finger within the space between the keyboard and the lid. The hinge does flap around a lot, so if you accidentally bump the table, you can see that there is a fair bit of flap to it. Now, this is a wobbly table, but even if it's on a stable table, as you can see, even if I move it a little, the hinge does flap a fair bit, but it's all good otherwise. The keyboard deck is also pretty spacious with a very big trackpad. You love to see it, and the keyboard is honestly one of the best I've ever used on a laptop. The back of the laptop is all vents to power HP's cooling system, which they claim makes it the most cool or the coolest 14-inch gaming laptop, but more on that later. You also get a Type-C port for data transfer and an HDMI port that's wired directly to your dedicated GPU for extra performance. The left side has a Thunderbolt 4 port and an HDMI, a 3.5mm audio jack, and you get two USB-A ports on the right. So pretty good I/O for a 14-inch device. But nothing to write home about, as you'll certainly need a USB-C dongle or dock for connecting memory cards or Ethernet for network connectivity. Speaking of which, you get Wi-Fi 6E or Wi-Fi 7 depending on whether the option is available in your region or not. Bluetooth versions also vary between 5.2 and 5.3, but network connectivity options are strong regardless. There's also an IR camera for Windows Hello face detection. So the configuration that we have here cost us around 1,50,000 rupees or almost $1,700 US, but you can go much higher on HP's website if you deck the laptop out fully. This is also a machine I bought with my own dime and not a review sample from HP. So HP, if you're watching this and you want me to review the second generation of this laptop because I really like this one, feel free to send it over. The laptop comes with a 14-inch 2880 by 1800 display that goes up to 120 Hz. It's also a variable refresh rate panel, meaning it can automatically switch to 60 Hz when it's on battery to save power. You also get 10-bit HDR support, and there is no matte finish on the display, which makes it viewing outdoors a little difficult. So as you can see, we have quite a bit of glare here from the lighting on the set. But it does get pretty bright at around 600 nits, so I think you'll be fine as long as you're not under direct sunlight. I don't have any complaints about the display. The colors are accurate, the viewing angles are good, and there is almost no response time courtesy of the OLED panel. And everything from games, movies, and even regular web browsing looks great. So this is how the onboard camera looks and sounds. It's a 1080p camera, and since you also get an NPU in the laptop, there are some features like auto framing, much like Apple's center stage. So if I move around here, you can see that it does follow me through reasonably well. There is also artificial eye contact and background removal, so you can play around with those features as well. All of them are accessible right here in the Windows Studio effect, so I can turn on eye contact, and even though it doesn't work great for some reason, I don't understand why. Maybe it's the angle, but I have currently turned it on and it doesn't seem to be doing anything. So there is that, and of course there is the background effects. So you can blur, you can portrait blur or standard blur, whatever. So yeah, you have these options, but this is how it looks without any sort of background framing on it. A lot of these features are already available on just regular video conferencing apps, so it's kind of confusing to have them built in as well, but if you want them, they're here. The speakers are also pretty good. Here's a comparison against the M2 MacBook Air to give you some context. They are downfiring and not quite MacBook level, but they're great otherwise, with more bass and clarity than I originally expected. One downside though is that they vibrate the entire laptop, so if you're typing with music at full volume, you will feel the vibration on the keyboard deck and on the keys when you're typing, but they do get reasonably loud, and I kind of don't mind the vibration, so it is fine by me. As I mentioned before, this is one of the best keyboards I have used on a laptop so far. The key travel is surprisingly deep, they feel consistent throughout the keyboard, and they also have a rather strong bounce, so you will enjoy typing and gaming on them for the most part. So just to show you a sample, here is how our typing test. The keyboard styling is the most polarizing thing here. So you're either going to hate it or love it. There is no in between. It looks great to me on the white version, but your opinion may vary because the keys have this sort of translucent area around them which really lets the RGB backlighting shine through. It is a 4-zone RGB keyboard on my variant, and the backlight gets very bright, especially if you're in a dark room. I'd have liked it if HP gave more options for backlight brightness, however, because the hardware brightness key on this keyboard switches between 100%, 50% and 0% brightness. And sometimes even 50% brightness can be too bright depending on what color you're using. So if you have something like blue backlighting, it can really pierce your eyes when you're typing in a dark room. There is also a per key RGB version of this, but it will run you almost $70 extra if I remember correctly. And that is if you can even get it, because of course it's not available in every region. Now the trackpad. So the trackpad is actually a joy to use. I have never had this big a trackpad on a Windows laptop before. Of course it's not quite MacBook sized, but it's still pretty big. I can fit all 4 of my fingers in here. Doesn't have any fancy haptic feedback or anything, but it's got a rather satisfying click to it and has a pretty big surface area, and the gestures work fine, so you can open all of your workspaces, cycle between apps, scroll, do whatever, zoom in, zoom out, everything works as you'd expect. It has this matte feeling texture which isn't glass but doesn't quite feel like plastic either. You'd still want a mouse if you want to play games though. One quick thing to note here is that I'm not sure if you can notice, but the keyboard has this HyperX branding on it, and the laptop itself has HyperX integration. So the keyboard is from HyperX, and the Transcend 14 comes with a HyperX receiver built in, meaning you can pair your 2.4 GHz HyperX headphones without having to use a dongle. I'm not sure how well it works given HyperX doesn't really sell wireless headphones here, and the headphone bundle isn't available for purchase in India. They also make it sound like they should work with any HyperX device that communicates over 2.4 GHz wireless, but I'm not sure whether that's going to work either. So for sure you can pair HyperX Cloud 3 wireless headphones with it without using a dongle as far as I know, but other HyperX peripherals, I'm not sure if that's going to work. So the Wi-Fi performance is about what you'd expect. Connection is pretty stable and range is good, but I'd still recommend plugging in an Ethernet cable for the best ping, although you will have to get a dongle for that. Bluetooth 5.2 also works fine on my machine with no dropouts, lags or other connectivity problems at the time of this review. I've been using it for almost a month now. Do keep in mind that the Wi-Fi card is baked onto the motherboard, meaning you won't be able to upgrade it later down the line. The Wi-Fi has degraded with time on every Windows laptop I have owned, so I'm not quite sure how well this will fare over the next couple of years, but we'll find out. Windows Hello face recognition works a bit too well in my opinion, so I'll just show you how fast it is. And hopefully the overhead camera will be able to get it. Okay, so I've locked the PC and I'm hiding from the camera now. And here we go. And wow, it already saw me. So I can just dismiss the lock screen and get in. It also dismisses the lock screen on its own sometimes. So if it just sees me, okay, never mind. Works pretty quickly, that was my point. So sometimes when you're trying to lock the PC, it will lock and immediately unlock, just as you saw right now when you still be there in front of the screen. It works reasonably well in low light conditions as well, so I wouldn't be too concerned about Windows Hello not working properly. Now let's come to performance, and that is where the Omen loses ground to other 14-inch laptops. HP has made a few weird decisions here which have cost the Transcend 14 clearly in terms of performance compared to other 14-inch laptops, especially the Zephyrus G14, the 2024 variant. It comes in the same price range as this and performs better. The problem here is the power budget. This laptop only has 140 watts to work with when plugged in, and the RTX 4060 only gets 65 watts max. This means that the GPU is not going to perform at its best, considering it's rated for roughly 100 watts, so you need to run the 4050s, 4060s and I think 4070 as well on at least 100 watt to get optimal performance. The CPU performance is as you'd expect from a Corsair Ultra 7 155H. The GPU falls short, which means you lose out as much as 10 to 30% performance in games compared to something like the Zephyrus G14, which costs more or less the same while also being lighter. This is 1.6 kilograms and the Zephyrus G14 is 1.5. So Jared's Tech has done an incredible job of testing the Transcend 14 against a bunch of other 14-inch and bigger devices for performance, so you can go check his video out for in-depth numbers. That's not to say that this machine is slow by any means, but if you're looking for the most performance in a 14-inch machine, this ain't it, chief. Part of why HP has lowered the RTX 4060 or 4070's TGP in this laptop to 65 watts is also to ensure the laptop runs cool. In my testing, the cooling system here, which includes a vapor chamber by the way, is more than capable of handling more heat. So it tops out at around 75 to 80 degrees at its heaviest loads. According to me, this shows that the GPU should be good for another 10 to 15 watts without hurting the thermal performance a lot. There is no way you can increase this power budget either, so except for a small smart boost feature in HP's Omen Hub, which is like hidden and you need to know about it in order to be able to enable it, there's not much you can do to increase the power that the GPU consumes. There is only 16 GB of onboard RAM, and that can feel on the lower side. I know I was skeptical about that before getting this laptop, but I don't see it impacting day-to-day performance, especially considering just how fast the RAM is. I would have preferred to buy 32 GB, but HP has very weird specifications when it comes to this laptop, so the 32 GB RAM is only available in the 4070 variant of this. So if you end up getting the 4060 and there is an even lower powered 4050 variant, you're not getting the 32 gigs of RAM. So depending on your budget, you might have to give 32 GB RAM a skip and be okay with 16 GBs, which works fine, but I'd still want more. The Transcend 14 is still a good performing machine and you'll get over 60 FPS in just about every game you play, although you will have to sacrifice graphics quality, in some cases resolution as well. Day-to-day tasks and even other heavy lifting like video editing will be great, so it's also a great option for a mobile workstation. Finally, the battery life on this laptop is great. You can turn the dedicated GPU off and only use the integrated GPU for maximum power savings, but in my testing, leaving the laptop in hybrid mode and setting it to the eco mode in HP's Omen Hub with the screen brightness around 20 to 30% will comfortably get you almost 6 hours of battery life, and you can extend it to around 8 hours as I was able to with when I was running with the integrated GPU only. But this laptop requires a restart to do this, so switching between modes can be a bit of a hassle. I just leave it in hybrid mode most of the times and it just works fine. I can just turn off the keyboard backlighting and lower the brightness a little bit and it meets my needs. It also charges pretty quickly. So there are two Type-C ports on the laptop as I showed you before. One is on the side and one is on the back. Both can charge the device, although only the Type-C port on the rear offers the full 140 watt charging the laptop supports. The other port tops out at 100 watts. HP claims that the laptop can charge up to 60% in 30 minutes with the included Type-C charger. It comes pretty close with 55% in 30 minutes from zero on my machine. And if you want to use external chargers with the laptop, make sure that you get one that's at least 100 watts and over 20 volts. Otherwise, you may not be able to charge the laptop when it's running. Pricing will vary greatly as HP offers a ton of specs for this laptop. You can choose between an Ultra 7 or Ultra 9 processor, an RTX 4050, 60 or 4070 GPU, 16 or 32 GB of RAM, options for keyboard backlighting and more. Overall, this laptop can run you anywhere between $1,500 to $2,200. And once again, the actual price you get will vary greatly based on what specs are available in your region, so be wary of that. You can check out HP's official website to see how much of a hole the spec that you want will burn in your pocket. So should you buy the Omen Transcend 14? Well, if you care about playing games on the highest possible setting, resolution and FPS, then no. If you don't care about those things and instead want a laptop that runs surprisingly cool for a 14-inch device, the Transcend 14 is the way to go. It also looks better than any other 14-inch gaming laptop in my opinion. Probably if you discount the Razer Blade 14, but then that's just a separate class of machine in its own right. Especially this white finish, which can also be a pain in the bottom to clean. But if you end up getting the sort of the black finish, it can also be a fingerprint magnet. As you can see, there are no fingerprints, well, there are fingerprints, but you can't see them as clearly on the white finish. The black one can be a little fingerprinty. It also has this matte razor blade type finish on top. This sanded down, I wouldn't say sanded down, but very matte touch aluminium, I think aluminium on the top. But if you're looking for more performance for your money in the same 14-inch factor and are willing to deal with a slightly more common design, something like the Zephyrus G14 will serve you better.
Overall, the HP Omen Transcend 14 is a great gaming laptop and I'd rate it a solid 8 out of 10. It's got great battery life, great display, great keyboard, great build quality, good ports, and a really good trackpad. The only two things that I would take points off of is the lower amount of RAM at 16 GB when it really should be 32 GB, and the power budget, which restrains the laptop's performance to what it really should be considering it launches in 2024.
If you like this video, consider subscribing, give us a thumbs up, press the bell icon and tell us in the comments below what more such content can we make for you. If you'd like to know more about tech, visit our website Candid.Technology, follow us on social media, follow me on Instagram or Twitter, and we'll see you in the next video.